Okay, so loans and credit. Um, I think this topic is very important, just because when we're talking loans and credit, that's something that almost everybody has experience with. Almost all of us have some kind of debt in some way, if it's a credit card or it might be student loans or something, right? So it's important for us to understand how these different credit institutions and whatnot work, right? So that's why we're going to talk about loans and credit. So in terms of credit, there are three main types of credit that you can get. You can get revolving credit, which is basically where you have a credit line and you can use the money, but there's a maximum limit that you can spend. So maybe a bank gives you a credit card with a limit of $5,000, and you can spend up to $5,000, and that's pretty much it. And then you just basically are paying it back, and that's revolving credit. Installment credit is basically a loan where you take a certain amount out and then you agree to pay that amount back in these fixed payments. With revolving credit, you can pay back in whatever way you want to pay back, right? So you can pay it back any kind of way you want. There usually is some kind of minimum payment, but with revolving credit, like your credit card, you can make the minimum payment. You could pay $500 on your credit card in a month if you want. You can pay whatever you want. With installment credit, you make an agreement to pay a specific amount back. Some examples of installment credit might be like your mortgage, where you have a fixed mortgage that you pay each month, or your car loan, where you are paying on your car a fixed amount and you agree on that fixed amount when you buy the car. There are also different kinds of personal loans and whatnot, student loans. All of these things are things where you agree to pay a specific amount back when you take the loan out. And that's installment credit, right? Or an installment loan. And then open credit is a little more rare. Open credit is basically where you don't have a credit limit. It's like a credit card, but there's no limit on what you can spend. And the only thing is you basically got to pay it all back in full each month. And that's basically the main thing. So open credit, you don't have a limit. I think it's much more rare, right? Open credit is much more rare. So moving on, basically what credit is like the reverse of compound interest. When we're compound interest is working for us, credit is kind of working against us. But it's still compounding in the same way, but it's working against us. And basically, usually things will be compound interest, but some of them will be simple interest. And with revolving credit, right, or like your regular credit card, you're basically getting compounded every month, right, or every payment period. So if you, whatever payment you make your July payment. Whatever payment you make, they add the interest on, and that interest makes your balance go up a bit, right? So that is kind of credit cards and how they work. Usually you get a minimum monthly payment, but there's a catch. If you just pay the minimum payment, you usually won't pay your credit card back in any significantly quick period of time. Usually it'll take you a very long time to pay your credit card back if you only make the minimum payment, right? And you have to be careful because your credit card debt, I mean, it could balloon like that. It could balloon very, very fast. So you just want to be careful. And with installment loans, we can call them amortized loans because with installment loans, you pay the interest first. You have a fixed payment that you have to pay, but you pay the interest up front, right? So that's why it sometimes takes longer, because they charge you the interest up front. That's also the reason why making extra payments on your car or on your house or whatever can pay your loan down faster, because you're paying the interest up front. Your extra payments will go towards reducing the principal. And that's the idea behind amortized loans. This is the installment loan formula, and this is the main one that we get. We can actually use the installment loan formula for another scenario where we may want to calculate a way to pay back our credit cards. We can use the installment loan formula in an example like that for paying back our credit cards. But the installment loan formula is specifically for calculating what your monthly payment has to be right? If you want to take a certain loan out with a certain interest rate for a certain amount of time. So what we are finding when we do an installment loan calculation, we are finding your payment. Like, what is your payment going to be? So let's say you're going to buy a car, it costs $50,000, and you're trying to find out what will your payment be depending on different interest rates, right? That's what you use, the installment loan formula. We need to know P, which is the amount that you want to borrow, R, which is our interest rate. We need to know N, which is how many times you're going to make a payment in a year. Believe it or not, all loans do not require a payment every month. There's some loans that require a payment every quarter. There's some loans that require a payment bi-weekly, right? For example, if you were to borrow money from, say, your 401k or something, you would pay that back with every paycheck, right? And that would be a bi-weekly, paying it back bi-weekly. And then we need to know Y, which is the loan term in years, right? We also need to know that. So once we know those four things, we can then calculate what our regular payment amount is going to be. So let's do an example really quickly. And again, just really quick, do this first. Do this little bit of multiplication right here first. Do that first. And do R over N. Do those two things first. And that will help you a whole lot. So let's say we are going to buy a car. Let's say Camille. Camille's going to buy a new car. And the car Camille wants cost... The car Camille wants cost...
35.
30,000?
Something. Yeah, that's how much the car did cost. I don't know.
Okay, we're going to say it costs $32,500.
Mm-hmm.
$32,500 for the car. And the interest rate she gets is, we'll just say 5%. I don't know why I put a dollar sign next to the interest rate. We'll say the interest rate is 5%. Right? And she's going to pay this car back over a 60-month term. Right? And that's all the information we have. We want to find out what her monthly payment's going to be. So we're going to find the monthly payment, or the PMT. That's what we need to find, the monthly payment or the PMT. So for our given, let's look back and see what are the things we need to know. We need to know P, which is the starting loan amount, or how much we're borrowing. How much are we borrowing? We are borrowing $32,500. We're not going to put any down payment on it. We're just going to borrow the whole amount. We need to know what R is. R is the annual interest rate. That's our 5%. So we're going to put 0.05. We need to know N. N is how many times we're making a payment per year. For this, it doesn't say exactly explicitly how many times they're making a payment. When it doesn't say how many times you're going to make a payment in a year, just assume that you're making one payment each month, right? So we're just going to assume that we are making 12 payments in a year, because one payment in a month is 12 payments in a year. So N equals 12, right? And then we have, lastly, we know how many years. How many years? Anybody? How many years is she borrowing this money for?
5 years.
5 years. How do we know it's 5 years?
60 divided by 12.
Exactly. So she's borrowing this money for 5 years. Now we can go to our solution. And we're going to start by writing down the formula. PMT equals P times R over N. And that's divided by 1 minus 1 plus R over N, right? And that's raised to this power minus N Y. That's the power it's raised to. All right, now we can start plugging things in. So what's P? P is 32,500. What's R? 0.05 over 12 divided by 1 minus 1 plus 0.05 over 12 to the minus ny, minus 12 times 5. Now remember the ones I said do first, right? We want to do this up here, and that's the same thing as this up here. So we're going to do all of those easy ones first. So we're going to leave everything else the same. 32,500 times, what's 0.05 over 12? I got 0.00416. So we'll do 0.004142. 0.0042. And then we're dividing this by 1 minus 1 plus, and notice it's the same R over N. Right? See, it's the same thing. 0.05 over 12. So we can just put the same number there. 0.0042. And what power is it raised to? What's 12 times 5? I'm sorry. Give me 1 second, you all. I'm sorry about that. The kids turned the TV on to like 1,000 and it was so loud. Alright, so let's continue with our example. So minus 12 times 5. Minus 12 times 5 is minus 60. Right? Put that in parentheses. So now we have equals. And then we can just start simplifying it. So we do parentheses first. This down here is the parentheses. So let's do that. We have 32,500 times 0.0042 divided by 1 minus 1 plus 0.0042 is just 1.0042. So this is what we just did. We just did this part in the parentheses, and that's to the minus 60. Now we can simplify again. Let's actually take this time to multiply the top. We can just do that one time. Let's multiply that. 32,500 times the 0.0042. 32,500 times 0.0042, and we get 136.5. And then let's do this exponent at the same time. Let's do this. I'm sorry.
Talking to my son.
Okay, let's do this exponent at the same time. Right, let's do this exponent at the same time. 1.0042 to the minus 60. So 1.0042 to the minus. Make sure you put that minus sign in there. And we get, the 1 is still there. And we get 0.776. So we'll say 0.778. 0.7776. So we'll say 0.778. Right? Now we can simplify this one more time. Let's do the subtraction at the bottom. We have 136.5 divided by 1 minus 0.778, and we get 0.22. Now we need to do the division. 136.5 divided by 0.222, and we get 614.86, which is the amount that the payment would be with a 5% interest rate. That's the amount the payment would be. So now,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So you're saying for minus 60, you wanted us to put in minus, not the negative sign, correct?
Put in the negative sign. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then why is it doing that? Okay,
Put in the
something
negative
might just be
sign.
wrong with mine.
Yep. So you got to put in the negative sign, and when you put in
It
the negative
wouldn't let
sign,
me.
that'll get you.
There it is. Okay.
Close the door. Close it. Put in the negative sign.
Then okay.
And that should get you to 0.778.
Thank you.
So now we got this 614. Now you may say, wait, 614, that sounds like a lot. But let's multiply and see how much we're actually going to pay for this car. So we do the 614 a month. And how many payments is she going to make in total?
What is it? 36.
How many payments will it be? Was it 60 months term?
60.
So it's times 60.
Payment?
Yep. Let's multiply that, and what do we get? 614.86 times 60. And we get...
Oh, no. 36. 891 and 60 cents. 36
Yep.
cents.
So we are paying $36,891.60 versus what we actually thought the car was going to be is $32,500. Right? So this versus this, and we can actually see how much we pay in interest by just doing the subtraction, because this is the amount which is the principal, what we borrowed plus the interest. That's principal plus interest. And this is just the principal. So if we want to find out how much we pay in interest, we could just do some subtraction. So let's subtract 32,500. We are paying a grand total of $43,091.60 in interest. That's the amount that we pay in total in interest. So this is what we pay in total. This is what we borrowed, and this is how much we're paying just in interest. Now you may say $4,300. That's a lot of money to pay in interest. But I mean, is it really? It kind of depends. How much did you use the car? How much did you need the car? You know, is it worth it? Was the car worth that, $36,000? Are you willing to pay it? I mean, honestly, it's kind of up to you. It's your decision. But by doing this and calculating how much you're going to pay in interest, you can now be empowered to kind of make a decision on your own and make a better decision, right? And if you get like a ridiculously high interest rate, that's when this kind of thing is really, really important. Because if you're paying like 18% on one of those crazy subprime car loan interest rates, it may not be worth it. Because let's say you're buying a $10,000 car and you got to pay $8,000 in interest. You're paying $18,000 for a car that probably wasn't even worth $10,000 to begin with, right? So in that case, it just probably is not worth it. But what this does is this empowers you to kind of make that decision and figure it out on your own. Figure out if it's worth it on your own. Now, another thing that we can do with our installment loan formula, let me just add another slide here. New slide. There we go. Another thing we can do is we can actually use this to calculate how we could quickly pay back, make a plan. Let me not say how we can quickly, but how we can make a plan to pay off a credit card. So, for example, let's say you had a credit card and you owed $5,000 on your credit card. Now, usually what people will do, people will say, oh, I just pay the minimum. Or people will say, I paid twice the minimum. Or they'll just make something up, right? But the best thing to do is to actually make a plan. So you can make a plan and say, I want to pay my credit card off in 1 year. How much would I have to pay per month to pay off my credit card in 1 year? Now, in this case, you may say, well, I'll just divide 5,000 by 12 and then I'll figure it out. But that won't work because what are you forgetting? You're forgetting that you have to pay interest on that credit card as well. So if you just do 5,000 times 12, your number will be off because you'd be leaving off the interest that you have to pay. So how can we do this? Well, we can just do the same kind of situation where we set up an installment loan formula and we find the payment. So in this case, if we wanted to say pay out 5,000, we'll change the number a year. We'll just say we want to set a goal for ourselves to pay off this credit card in 2 years and be completely paid off. And we're going to find out how much do we need to pay each month. So we want to pay it off in 2 years. And let's say our interest rate is 29.9%. I'll round it up to 30%. Right? That's like, I think, the highest that they can charge you. So I like to do that. That way you're like overestimating a little bit. We'll just say 30%. Now you're overestimating and you'll be paying a little more, so you'll pay it off a little faster. So, and then we're paying it off in 2 years. We're paying 30%. How often are you making payments? You're making payments every month, right? So pay it off. We're making payments every month. So now what we can do is let's go to our given. We know what we're trying to find, how much we have to pay each month. So let's go to our given. We need to know the starting principal. What's the starting principal? $5,000, right? We need to know, let's go back and see, what do we need to know? The annual percentage rate. R is 30%, which is 0.3. We need to know how many payments we make in a year, which is N. We're going to make 12 payments in a year. And then how many years are we going to take to pay it off? Our goal is to pay it off in 2 years. Now, when we do this process, let's say the payment amount that we get is too large. If the payment amount we get is too large and we're like, oh, we can't handle that, then we need to make this number bigger. We need to take a longer amount of time. And by taking a longer amount of time to pay it off, we will then get a number that might be suitable for our budget. So now what we need to do is we need to plug these things into our formula and then solve it. I'm going to leave this one for you all to solve. So let's say we have PMT equals P times R over N, right? Divided by 1 minus 1 plus R over N to the negative NY. And then we can plug the numbers into here. We get 5,000 times 0.3 over 12 divided by 1 minus 1 plus 0.3 over 12. And that's raised to the minus 12 times 2 power. Plug all of that in, simplify it, and we will get some payment amount out, and that will be the amount that we have to pay. So what I want you all to do is kind of a little mini homework assignment. I want each of you all to take a credit card that you have. If you don't have a credit card, just make something up. Take a credit card that you have and make a plan for paying it off. Select the number of years you want to take to pay it off. Find out what your interest rate is. If you can't find out what your interest rate on the card is, just use 30%, right? And then do the calculation. Assume that you're paying off the credit card. You're making one payment. You're making one payment a month. So that's N equals 12. And calculate what payment would you need to pay it off in that time period. And if the payment amount is too much for you, make an adjustment, do the calculation again, and find a new payment amount. All right. So moving on, just looking at how these amortized or installment loans work. When we say the interest is paid up front, this is kind of what we mean, where we can see that over the life of the loan, this yellow section is interest, and you can see that in the beginning, most of your payment, each of these bars is your payment. Your payment doesn't change. See, your payment is constant. So in the beginning, most of what you pay is yellow, right? And most of what you pay is interest. And over time, the amount that you pay, the green amount gets bigger. The green amount is actually paying off the principal and reducing the amount that you owe. So the green amount gets bigger over time, and the yellow amount gets smaller over time. So you start off paying a lot of interest, and over time you pay more and more principal till you get to the end where you're mostly paying off your principal. And again, this is the reason why, right? This is the reason why it makes sense to just have that's why they say if you make one extra payment on your loan every year, it will go a long way towards reducing the amount that you owe over time, right? So it can make a big difference. And with that, we are finished with